Professor Keithvar adjusted his scanner array for the third time, tentacles twitching with academic excitement. The asteroid field had been picked clean by salvage crews centuries ago, but the deep scan readings were unmistakable. Something big, something old, something human. Magnificent specimen, he muttered into his comm, 6 eyes tracking the readouts. Hull composition matches pre-Federation human metallurgy. Carbon dating suggests 12 millennia, minimum. His research assistant, a nervous Zelkin named Pip, floated nearby in her environmental suit. "Professor, are you certain it's safe to activate the scanner array? The protocols clearly state—" "Protocols are for graduate students," Kethvar interrupted, powering up the deep scan beam. "This could be the archaeological find of the millennium. A genuine human relic from the lost era." The scanner beam lanced out, piercing the asteroid debris like a surgical laser. For a moment, nothing happened. Ancient metal absorbed the energy, silent and dead. Then every alarm in the solar system started screaming. The derelict ship blazed to life, running lights strobing in patterns that hurt to look at. External speakers crackled with static, then cleared into crystal-clear audio broadcasting in 17 different languages. "Attention, citizen. Your vehicle has been parked in a restricted zone for 11,943 years. Parking violation citation, number 4428, Zulu Tango has been issued. Please report to the nearest municipal authority to resolve this matter." Kethvar stared at his instruments. "That's not possible." The ship continued its cheerful announcement, cycling through Galactic Standard, Old Terran, 3 extinct dialects of Rigelian, and what sounded suspiciously like dolphin clicks. The parking violation notice played in an endless loop, complete with cheerful musical accompaniment. "Professor," Pip squeaked, "the energy readings are off the charts. That's not ancient technology. That's current generation power distribution. Impossible. The carbon dating." A new voice cut through the parking announcement. Human, male, tired. "Oh, come on. I was only supposed to be out for the weekend." Emergency beacons started broadcasting from deep within the ship's hull. Standard distress protocols, except these weren't calling for help. They were advertising available services: life support, medical bay, recreational facilities, and something called a nacho dispensary. "By the 7 moons of Cathara," the professor breathed. "There's someone alive in there." The Galactic Archaeological Survey had strict protocols for this exact scenario: contamination procedures, temporal paradox prevention, cultural sensitivity training. Pip was already fumbling for her emergency manual, pages fluttering in 0G. "Professor, we need to contact the Temporal Authority, and the Cultural Preservation Board, and probably the Department of Impossible Things." Mechanical hiss echoed across the comm channels. Metal groaning. Hydraulics cycling. "Did I miss anything important?" The human voice sounded clearer now, closer to the surface. "Please tell me the parking enforcement drones didn't evolve into something worse." Kethvar's academic composure cracked. "Sir, you've been in cryogenic suspension for 12,000 years. Human civilization as we know it ended before the Third Galactic War. You're supposed to be extinct." A pause. Then laughter. Actual human laughter, recorded in xenobiology textbooks as an expression of amusement typically preceding dangerous behavior. 12,000 years? That's ridiculous. I set the timer for 48 hours, 56 at most. The sound of someone stretching, joints popping. "Wait, what do you mean we're extinct?" "I'm right here." Pip was hyperventilating into her breathing apparatus. "Professor, this violates every temporal mechanics law we have. The cascade implications alone could—" "Oh, right," the human interrupted, apparently talking to himself now. "I forgot to carry the 2 when I converted to metric time. Math was never my strong suit." A mechanical thunk. "So what's the date? And please tell me the dry cleaners on Station Gamma 23 are still in business. My good suit's been sitting there for ages." Professor Kethvar felt his career in xenoarchaeology collapsing into a singularity of impossibility. The carefully constructed timeline of human extinction, the museum exhibits, the peer-reviewed papers on the lost era. All of it built on the assumption that ancient humans were actually, dead. "Sir," he managed, "Station Gamma 23 was destroyed in the stellar reformation. 8,000 years ago." "Damn it!" The human sounded mildly annoyed, like someone who'd missed a dinner reservation. "I really liked that suit." Emergency klaxons started wailing across the archaeological survey ship. Multiple contacts incoming. Fast. Official. "This is Archaeological Survey Command to research vessel Curiosity. We're detecting massive energy signatures from your location. Explain immediately." Kethavar looked at his instruments, then at the ancient but not actually ancient human ship broadcasting parking violations into the void. He looked at Pip, who was quietly having an existential crisis behind her face mask. "Command," he said slowly. "I think we're going to need a bigger form." The human's voice drifted across the comm one more time, casual as discussing the weather. "So, anyone know if the war ended yet? Because I've got about 800 friends scattered across the galaxy, and they're going to be really cranky when they wake up." 3 different government emergency channels started broadcasting at once, creating a symphony of bureaucratic panic. In the distance, ships were changing course, racing toward their coordinates. Professor Kethvar realized he'd just made the kind of discovery that ended careers, started wars, or both. "Pip," he said quietly, "I think we're about to find out why humans used to scare people." The Galactic Transit Authority arrived first, as they always did when there was money to be made from fines. 3 enforcement vessels dropped out of hyperspace with the kind of precision that suggested they'd been monitoring emergency channels for profitable disasters. "This is Transit Enforcement Captain Verk to unknown vessel," crackled the comm. "You are operating in violation of 16 different parking ordinances, 12 safety regulations, and at least 3 laws of physics. Prepare for boarding and citation processing." The human ship responded immediately. "Oh, thank the void. Finally, someone who makes sense. I've been trying to pay this stupid parking ticket for hours." Captain Verk, a particularly officious bureaucrat from the planet Stamp, materialized via teleporter on Professor Kethvar's research vessel. His uniform was so thoroughly pressed it could probably cut glass, and his briefcase contained enough forms to document the heat death of the universe. "Right," Verk announced, pulling out a tablet that looked like it could process the GDP of a small moon. "Let's get this sorted. Standard parking violation, improper vessel storage, failure to renew permits." He paused, stylus hovering over the screen. "Registration date, please." The human's voice drifted from the ship's external speakers. "Oh, I've got all my paperwork right here. 1 second." What followed was the sound of someone rummaging through what sounded like a junk drawer the size of a cargo bay. Metal clanking. Papers rustling. Something that might have been a rubber duck squeaking. "Here we go." The human sounded triumphant. "Registration certificate, insurance documents, operator's license, and my parking permit for the Kepler 442 system." A data packet transmitted to Verk's tablet. The device immediately froze, screen flickering between error messages in languages that hadn't been spoken in millennia. "There seems to be a problem with your timestamp," Verk said, frowning at his malfunctioning equipment. "The system is reading your registration date as... That can't be right. What's it say?" "It says you registered this vessel in the year -8,000 and change." Verk's voice rose to the squeaky register that bureaucrats achieved when reality stopped cooperating with their forms. "Our computer system doesn't have negative years. It doesn't know what to do with negative years." Professor Kethavar watched in fascination as the most advanced citation processing system in the galaxy had what could only be described as a nervous breakdown. Error messages cascaded across the screen in 17 languages, none of them helpful. "Try turning it off and on again," the human suggested helpfully. Captain Verk did exactly that. The tablet immediately crashed 3 different government databases, triggered a tax audit on a planet that didn't exist yet, and somehow issued a marriage license to a black hole. "This is unprecedented," Verk muttered, pulling out a backup tablet. And then a 3rd tablet when that one also had an existential crisis. "Form 23B requires a proper timestamp. I can't process a citation without a timestamp." Maybe put down really, really old, the human offered. While the Transit Authority grappled with temporal paradoxes in their paperwork, Professor Kethvar received an emergency transmission from the Department of First Contact. The screen flickered to life, revealing Director Zex Thala, whose species had evolved from accountants and still looked the part. Professor, I understand you've made contact with a surviving human from the Lost Era. This is extraordinarily significant. We need to brief him on galactic civilization, cultural integration protocols, and— Actually, the human interrupted, somehow tapping into their secured channel, I just need to know about property taxes. I've got a vacation home on Risa, and if the interest has been compounding for 12,000 years, I'm probably in serious trouble. Director Zex Thala blinked all 6 eyes in sequence. Sir, I'm not sure you understand. You've been in cryogenic suspension during the formation of 3 galactic governments, 2 major wars, and the complete restructuring of known space. This is the most significant first contact event in recorded history. Right, but what's the interest rate on overdue property taxes? What? Because I'm pretty sure I left the sprinklers running too. The water bill alone could bankrupt a small planet by now. Professor Kethvar watched the director's face cycle through several expressions, finally settling on the look of someone trying to explain quantum mechanics to a particularly stubborn houseplant. Sir, your species was believed extinct. We have museums dedicated to human civilization, entire academic fields devoted to studying your lost culture. You've missed the rise and fall of galactic empires. Did anyone cancel my subscription to Galactic Geographic? Because those late fees are brutal. The absurdity reached critical mass when the tow truck arrived. It was a standard municipal vehicle, designed to haul illegally parked shuttlecraft and the occasional small cargo vessel. The driver, a Grelvac named Thunk, took one look at the ancient human ship and called his supervisor. Boss, I've got a problem. This thing is bigger than my truck. How much bigger? Like, significantly bigger. Also, Transit says it's older than our species. Also, the owner is asking about his rewards card points. Captain Verk had given up on his citation tablets and was now attempting to fill out forms by hand. His stylus kept breaking. There's no precedent for this situation, no forms, no procedures. The entire legal framework of galactic transportation assumes that vehicles don't predate civilization itself. Look, the human said, sounding slightly exasperated. This is getting complicated. How about we just find a different parking spot? Somewhere less administratively challenging? That's when someone made the mistake of running a full appraisal scan on the ship. Squeaked Pip, staring at her instruments in horror. Professor? According to these readings, that ship contains technology that shouldn't exist. The archaeological value alone. She paused, recalibrating her sensors. The computer keeps adding zeros to the estimated worth. It's up to 17 digits and climbing. Captain Verk looked up from his paperwork. 17 digits? 18 now. 19. The human sighed audibly. Great. Now I'm going to have to pay tax on unrealized capital gains. I should have just stayed asleep. Every government official in the system suddenly developed the kind of intense interest that made lawyers spontaneously materialize from hyperspace. The human, apparently oblivious to having just declared himself the richest entity in known history, continued his cheerful commentary. Anyone know if there's a good mechanic nearby? The nacho dispenser is making weird noises. Admiral Krickstall of the Galactic Defense Force had been having a perfectly normal day, until her quantum-encrypted comm started screaming about ancient human superweapons and parking violations. She arrived with a full battle fleet, which seemed like reasonable precaution until she actually saw the target. That's it? She asked her tactical officer, gesturing at the sleek vessel nestled in the asteroid debris. That's what triggered Code Black protocols. It looks like a luxury yacht. Ma'am, preliminary scans indicate— The officer's voice cut off as his console erupted in warning lights. Admiral, the target is powering weapon systems. Every military vessel in the fleet immediately went to red alert. Shields up, weapons hot, targeting solutions locked. The ancient human ship sat there, looking innocent as a museum piece, while broadcasting energy signatures that made experienced military officers break out in cold sweats. Weapons profile analysis complete, the tactical officer reported, voice climbing an octave. Ma'am, that ship is carrying enough firepower to sterilize a small moon. Plasma cannons rated for stellar bombardment. Kinetic accelerators that could punch through a battle station. And something called a reality adjustment beam that our computers refuse to analyze. Admiral Crixtall felt her 3 hearts skip in sequence. That's impossible. It's a civilian vessel. Admiral? The human's voice crackled across open channels, sounding confused. Why is everyone pointing guns at me? I'm just trying to find a parking spot. Sir, Admiral Crixtall replied with the careful tone reserved for armed lunatics and budget meetings. Our scans indicate your vessel is equipped with military-grade weaponry exceeding current galactic standards. Please explain. A pause. Oh, you mean the safety equipment? Yeah. Well, space is dangerous. Dangerous. Never know what you might run into out there. Safety equipment? Basic stuff. Asteroid deflectors, pirate deterrent systems, the usual. Though I guess the reality adjuster is probably overkill for weekend camping trips. The human sounded genuinely sheepish. My wife always said I overprepared for everything. The Admiral's tactical officer was making the kind of strangled noises that suggested his worldview was undergoing rapid and unwelcome revision. Admiral, if this is basic civilian safety equipment, what were their military vessels like? That question hung in space like a particularly ominous storm cloud. Sir, Admiral Crixtall said carefully, are there other vessels of your vintage still in operation? Oh sure, tons of them. We all went into cryo at the same time. Safety in numbers, you know. There's probably 847 ships scattered around the galaxy. Maybe 846 if Thompson's navigation system was as bad as I remember. The Admiral's bridge went very, very quiet. In the background, someone could be heard hyperventilating into a paper bag. 847 ships, she repeated slowly. All equipped with safety equipment? Like yours? More or less. Though Rodriguez always was paranoid about pirates. His ship probably has enough firepower to crack a planet. But hey, better safe than sorry, right? Admiral Crixtall closed her eyes and tried to imagine explaining to Galactic Command that humanity's weekend warriors carried enough personal armament to conquer star systems. It wasn't a pleasant thought. Admiral, her communications officer interrupted. Priority Alpha transmission from High Command. They want to know if we need the entire Third Fleet as backup. Tell them, the Admiral said slowly, to make it the Third and Fourth Fleets, and maybe the Fifth. Actually, just tell them to put everyone on standby. While military panic spread across multiple star systems, Professor Keith Varr was busy making an even more disturbing discovery in the historical archives. Ancient records that hadn't been accessed in millennia, buried in data cores that predated modern civilization. Pip, he called to his assistant, who was still having regular existential crises in the corner. I need you to cross-reference these temporal markers with galactic conflict records. What am I looking for? The last confirmed human activity before they disappeared. Kethvar pulled up stellar charts that showed the galaxy as it had been 12,000 years ago. According to these archives, human civilization didn't just fade away. It ended abruptly, all at once. The data painted a disturbing picture. Entire human colonies abandoned overnight, trade routes severed, communication networks going dark across hundreds of systems. And at the center of it all, references to something called the Last War. Professor, Pip squeaked, floating over to his workstation. These records indicate active hostilities right up until the moment humans vanished. But there's no record of who they were fighting. That's because everyone assumed humans were extinct, Kethvar realized with growing horror. No one bothered to check if the war actually ended. Admiral Crixtall received the historical data burst just as her fleet finished taking defensive positions around the human vessel. The ancient archives painted a picture that made seasoned military officers reach for antacids. Sir, she called to the human ship, our records indicate your era ended during a significant military conflict. Can you provide details about this Last war. Another pause. Longer this time. War? The human sounded genuinely puzzled. What war? We weren't at war with anybody. We were running away. Running away from whom? Well, that's the thing, the human said. And for the first time, his casual tone carried an edge of something that might have been concern. We never really figured out what they were. Just that they were big, nasty, and really didn't like us being in their neighborhood. Admiral Crixtall felt her blood freeze in her veins. Sir, are you saying the conflict was never resolved? Resolved? We went into cryo hoping the problem would go away. Figured 12,000 years was long enough for anything to lose interest and wander off. The human paused. Why? Please tell me you guys took care of whatever was chasing us. The Admiral looked at her tactical display, showing the current positions of all known galactic civilizations. Every species, every colony, every outpost built in the space that humanity had abandoned 12,000 years ago. Sir, she said quietly, I don't think anyone knew there was anything to take care of. That's when the Deep Space Monitoring Stations started reporting massive contacts moving in from dark space, contacts that had been traveling for a very, very long time. The human's voice drifted across the comm one final time, no longer casual. Uh-oh. I think nap time might be over. The silence that followed stretched across 17 star systems, as every military officer, bureaucrat, and archaeologist tried to process what they'd just heard. Admiral Crixtall was the first to find her voice. Sir, I need you to explain exactly what your people were running from. Well, the human said, and the casual tone was definitely gone now, replaced by something harder, more focused. The official term we used was existential nightmare fuel, but the scientists called them Devourers. Imagine if entropy decided to get aggressive and started eating reality for breakfast. Professor Kethvar felt his academic certainty dissolving into cosmic horror. Are you saying these entities consume matter? Matter, energy, space-time, the occasional philosophical concept? They're not picky eaters. The human's ship was coming fully online now. Systems that had been dormant for millennia awakening with the kind of purposeful hum that suggested serious business. We tried diplomacy first, obviously. Sent ambassadors, cultural exchange programs, fruit baskets. The Devourers sent back the ambassadors' component atoms with a note that roughly translated to, "Thanks for the snack." Admiral Crixtall was rapidly updating her threat assessment from archaeological curiosity to galaxy-ending crisis. Sir, why didn't humans warn the rest of the galaxy about this threat? Warn who? 12,000 years ago, the galaxy was mostly empty space and aggressive microbes. You guys built your entire civilization in our evacuation zone. The human paused. Which, in hindsight, was probably not the best long-term planning on our part. Director Zexathala's voice crackled across the emergency channel, tight with barely controlled panic. Are you telling us that the entire galactic community exists in space that these Devourers consider their territory? More like their hunting ground. Think of it as a nature preserve, except the nature wants to unmake you at the quantum level. The deep space monitoring reports were coming in faster now. Massive signatures, definitely artificial, moving at speeds that violated several laws of physics. They'd been traveling for 12 millennia, and they were almost home. How long do we have? Admiral Crixtall asked. Based on their last known velocity, and the fact that my proximity alarms are going insane? The human ship ran a quick calculation. Maybe 6 hours before the first scouts arrive, 18 hours before the main force gets here. What do you recommend? Well, first I need to wake up my friends. Then we need to figure out whether you folks are worth saving, or if we should just grab our stuff and keep running. That statement hit the comm channels like a plasma torpedo. Every species representative started talking at once, voices overlapping in a cacophony of interstellar panic. What do you mean, worth saving? You can't just abandon an entire galactic civilization. We have rights, treaties, galactic accords. The human cut through the noise with a kind of laugh that suggested he'd heard funnier jokes while watching planets die. Rights? The Devourers don't care about your rights. They don't recognize your treaties. They see a galaxy full of organized matter and energy, and they want to convert it back to useful chaos. Admiral Crixtall forced calm into her voice. What would it take for humanity to help us? That depends. How good are you at following orders from people who know what they're doing? Because if we're going to have this fight, we're going to have it our way. No committees, no bureaucratic oversight, no voting on tactical decisions while reality is being edited around us. The line went quiet, except for the hum of ancient human technology coming online. Weapons systems that made current military hardware look like toys. Defensive arrays that could probably hold off supernovas, and underneath it all, communication. Protocols reaching out across the galaxy to wake sleeping giants. Admiral, reported the communications officer, we're detecting activation signals across multiple sectors. Ships are powering up in the Kepler colonies, the Outer Rim, the Dead Zone, hundreds of them. The human ship's external speakers crackled with new voices. Sleepy, confused, irritated voices asking about the time, complaining about stiff joints, and wondering who'd left the coffee pot on for 12,000 years. Morning, everyone, their human announced cheerfully. Sorry to wake you up early, but we've got company coming. The bad kind. Already? A woman's voice, sharp with alertness. I thought we had at least another millennium before they tracked us down. Apparently not. Also, the locals built a whole civilization in our backyard while we were napping. They seem nice enough, but they're about as prepared for the Devourers as a paper airplane is for atmospheric re-entry. Are we helping them or evacuating past them? That question hung in space like a loaded weapon. 847 human ships, each carrying enough firepower to slag continents, waiting for an answer that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. The human in the archaeological site seemed to consider this carefully. What do you think, Admiral? You've had a few hours to get to know us. Are we the kind of species you want as allies, or the kind you'd rather see disappear back into the dark? Admiral Crixtall looked at her tactical display, showing the impossible firepower of a single human civilian vessel. She thought about their casual attitude toward technology that violated natural laws, their complete lack of concern for proper procedures and chain of command, their tendency to solve parking violations with reality-bending weapons. Then she thought about the alternative. Sir, she said formally, the Galactic Defense Force requests immediate assistance from human forces in defense of inhabited space. Well, the human said, and she could hear the grin in his voice. When you put it like that, how can we say no? Besides, we've got 12,000 years of interest on our real estate investments to protect. Across the galaxy, human ships began moving. Not the careful, predictable movements of modern military formations, but something older and more dangerous. The kind of maneuvering that suggested they'd fought impossible wars and won. Fair warning, the human added as his ship began to power up systems that made Admiral Crixtall's instruments weep. Things are about to get very interesting. You might want to clear non-essential personnel from any sectors where fighting is likely to occur. Define non-essential personnel. Anyone who doesn't want to see physics used as a weapon. The first Devourer scout ship dropped out of hyperspace 6 hours later, right on schedule. It was the size of a small moon, covered in angles that hurt to look at directly, radiating an aura of wrongness that made reality hiccup in its vicinity. It lasted approximately 37 seconds. The human response was swift, overwhelming, and completely insane. Weapons that rewrote local spacetime. Defensive systems that convinced attacking energy beams they'd rather be somewhere else. And at the center of it all, 847 humans who treated the laws of physics like polite suggestions. Contact destroyed, reported the tactical officer, staring at his instruments in disbelief. Whatever they hit it with, there's not even debris. It just stopped existing. Admiral, the human's voice was businesslike now, professional. You're about to see why the Devourers chased us out of our home territory. We don't fight fair, we don't fight clean, and we really don't like losing. The main force will be here soon, and when they arrive, you'll understand why galactic civilization needed 12,000 years to grow up before meeting us. Admiral Crixtall watched her sensors track the approaching Devourer fleet. Hundreds of reality-eating nightmares that had been traveling across the galaxy for 12 millennia, following the scent of fleeing prey. And standing between them and every living thing in known space were 847 humans who'd just woken up from the longest parking violation in galactic history. "Sir?" she asked quietly. "Are we going to win this?" The human was quiet for a moment. Then, "Admiral, ask me that question again after you've seen what happens when humans stop being polite." In the distance, space began to bend around the approaching human fleet. And Admiral Crixtal realized that galactic civilization was about to learn why some species were better left undisturbed. The main Devourer force arrived like a plague of geometric nightmares, their ships defying every principle of sane engineering. Crystalline structures that folded space around themselves, organic vessels that seemed to digest reality as they moved, and things that might have been ships, or might have been living entities, or might have been mathematical concepts given malevolent form. "Devourer fleet composition analysis complete," Admiral Crixtal's tactical officer reported, his voice climbing toward hysteria. 312 capital vessels. Estimated crew complement. Unknown. Weapons profile. The computer keeps crashing when it tries to analyze their armament. The lead Devourer ship was the size of a small star, its surface crawling with patterns that made observers forget their own names. It broadcast something that wasn't quite communication and wasn't quite psychic assault, but managed to be deeply unpleasant in 17 dimensions simultaneously. The translation came through as, "Prey that fled, your hiding ends. Cessation of struggle will minimize suffering." The human response was immediate and characteristically inappropriate. "Oh, blow it out your exotic matter exhaust port." What followed was the most lopsided battle in galactic history. The humans didn't form traditional battle lines or follow conventional tactical doctrine. Instead, they did things that made seasoned military observers question their understanding of reality. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Weapons that convinced enemy vessels they'd rather be antimatter. Defensive systems that politely asked incoming attacks to reconsider their life choices. "Admiral," Professor Kethavar called from his research vessel, watching the impossible battle unfold. "The energy readings from the human fleet. They're not just using advanced technology. They're rewriting fundamental constants on a local scale." One human ship, barely larger than a civilian transport, engaged a Devourer capital vessel the size of a city. Instead of firing conventional weapons, it broadcast something that Admiral Crixtal's instruments identified as weaponized mathematics. The Devourer ship responded by forgetting how to exist in three-dimensional space and promptly fell out of reality with an apologetic quantum sigh. "This is insane," muttered Captain Verk, who was still trying to process parking citations in the middle of a reality war. "How are they doing this?" The answer came from an unexpected source, the human ship's nacho dispenser, which had apparently achieved sentience during the battle and was now providing tactical commentary. "Simple," the dispenser announced in a cheerfully artificial voice. "When you spend 12,000 years running from entities that eat physics for breakfast, you learn to get creative with the menu. These guys think they're apex predators. We're about to teach them about invasive species." A Devourer battleship attempted to use what their databases classified as a reality deletion beam on a cluster of human vessels. The humans responded by reflecting the beam back through a series of interdimensional mirrors, causing the attacking ship to delete itself from several parallel universes simultaneously. "The Devourers are adapting," Admiral Crixtal observed, watching the enemy fleet shift tactics. "They're learning from each engagement." "So are we," replied the human pilot, and his tone carried an edge that made experienced predators nervously check their own six. "Difference is, we're better at it." The tide of battle shifted when the humans stopped playing defense and went on the offensive. They didn't just attack the Devourer ships, they attacked the concepts that allowed the ships to function. Vessels found themselves unable to remember how to move. Weapons forgot what they were supposed to shoot. One particularly unfortunate Devourer commander discovered that his ship had been convinced it was actually a small potted plant. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Devourer flagship. It's a surrender request." The revelation that cosmic horrors could actually surrender was almost as shocking as watching them get systematically dismantled by what appeared to be a civilian evacuation fleet with anger management issues. The human pilot's response was magnanimous in the way that victorious predators could afford to be. "Tell them they can leave, all of them, right now, and if they come back we won't be so gentle next time." The Devourer fleet departed with unseemly haste, their reality-bending ships retreating into dark space faster than their arrival. The last transmission from their flagship was a single word that roughly translated to impossible in 47 languages, 3 of which had been invented specifically to express existential terror. As the battlefield cleared and normal physics reasserted themselves, Admiral Crixtall found herself staring at readouts that would require entirely new categories of military classification. The humans had just fought off an invasion by entities that ate civilizations, and they'd done it while making casual conversation about nachos and parking violations. "Sir," she called to the human ship, "on behalf of the Galactic Defense Force and all member species, I want to thank you for—" "Don't mention it," the human interrupted. "Besides, we've got a vested interest in keeping the neighborhood nice. Property values, you know?" The last transmission from the human ship was almost conversational. "Oh, and Admiral, you might want to update your parking regulations. I think we're going to be sticking around for a while." As human ships settled into stable orbits around inhabited worlds, Admiral Crixtall realized that galactic civilization had just acquired the most dangerous, irreverent, and effective defense force in known history. They'd also learned why the universe had been so quiet for 12,000 years. Some sleeping dogs were better left lying, but when they woke up, it was very, very good to be on their side.